Welcome to another Perspectives podcast. Mr. Chase, we're back again. How are you doing?
Man. It's been a good start to the year.
Yeah, it's 2020.
It's 2020.
It's incredible.
Crazy.
Wow.
End of 2019 was something.
Yeah.
It was good and it was rough at times, but definitely grateful for just everything that's kind of going on.
Yeah. I feel like we made it 2020, especially at the beginning of every year. Everyone's just sitting down thinking about what they want to do and just things they want to accomplish and see, into the new year. And I feel like this is one of those special podcasts because every single time we have a podcast, we always have somebody on. And today we have a whole bunch of special guests that I want to introduce to you guys. And they look very nervous.
First time they've been on the podcast.
First time they've been on the podcast, so it's going to be exciting. If you want to go ahead and introduce them, that would be awesome.
Yeah, guys. So we're pretty excited about this episode. We're pretty much, as y'all probably saw by the title of the podcast, we're recording from our beginning of the year board meeting for Perspectives. And if y'all don't know, this podcast isn't just a random podcast we like to do.
Yeah.
It's a podcast for a nonprofit that we helped co-found called Perspectives Worldwide. And we're here just to be able to improve and bring unity to the missions experience. Mm-hmm. And we're here at the board meeting, just first meeting of the year for 2020, really just talking about everything that we did in 2019 and everything that we're hoping to get to in 2020. And I think it's cool for us to be able to be transparent over the podcast, and because I was kind of looking at it, there's never really been a nonprofit kind of broadcast a board meeting in a way and just kind of talking about all their things. And I think being able to be honest and open with that could be really cool and another almost introduction to the organization for everyone who's listening. And so here we have with us, we don't have the whole board with us because there's people that are all throughout Texas, but pretty excited. Obviously, unfortunately, we have myself and Joshua, so y'all got to suffer with us. But we also have my parents who are on the board, Jimmy and Susan Brown, and then one of our good family friends, one of the brains behind the operation, Mr. Bryn Ellis.
That's right.
So it's going to be good. He sacrificed some time. He just had a little kid, Kip. I should say his wife had a kid, and so sacrificing time to be out here. So appreciate it, man.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. So we're really just gonna start off with everything that we kind of did in 2019, and it'll be a structured conversation, but kind of just throwing out random things as well. And so I think kind of what we talked about first, what would be good is just to kind of talk about everything that we did in 2019, and then from there being able to, one of the things I think is good because actually at church today, I went to the Village with Ryan Birchfield down in Dallas, and they were actually talking about their mission statement and everything like that, and so it really refreshed me in terms of different things. And one of the purposes of a mission statement is something to strive towards, but also something to use as a standard, something for you to be able to look at what you've done and being able to see if what you're doing is still in line with the long-term vision and things like that. And so with us wanting to provide these missions opportunities and improve and bring unity to the missions to the church as a whole, I think that's a benchmark we can use for looking at these accomplishments in 2019 to see were any of these off the mark, were any of them good, things like that. And so kind of the first key initiative that we accomplished, we started and things like that in 2019 was to kind of build our model for missions, mission trips, things like that, and all the necessary components to that. And one of the reasons that we thought that was something to be very intentional about was for us as an organization, like if we're wanting to provide these missions opportunities in order for us to learn and grow and bring unity to it, we need to first understand like how we're even going to do what we do, so then we can understand like what to develop and things like that. Because like, for example, whenever we started having like the conversations with Pablo and them down in Costa Rica, like one of the things that I was kind of realizing in that was, hey, like I really want to do this, but at the same time, like I started to realize like, oh wait, we need money to build these houses. Like we need participants. Then like, oh wait, well, we're wanting to provide a good opportunity for the people once they come back, and like, so we need to build like these local partnerships to offer to the participants to serve in their community once they come back. And there's just all these things that we really wanted to include in trips that we need to build out.
Yep.
And the only way that we can know like which parts we need to build out and which parts we need to do first, so then we could do other parts, is to like completely build out this model. And like Dad, like I mean, I know that was something that you brought up, was like, you know, like the whole model for the organization, like I don't really feel like we know like kind of what's going on, or like where all the pieces fit. We're just kind of doing all these random things. Like we have a podcast, like we're working on like this project, we're doing this in Dallas, we're doing this in Fort Worth, like where does it all fit? And so being able to draw up it was a sketch because I'm not good at graphics on a computer, but in a sketch, being able to draw up kind of where like all these pieces fit,
Right.
and understand how a person can flow through the organization and like the purpose for everything, I think was good. I think that's something, thinking about it now, I don't want to skip necessarily forward to 2020, but maybe that's something that we could do over these first few months, is like continue to look at that and see if it's something where we need to make any tweaks to that model, or make it something like a little bit more official, rather than just in sketch, but actually like something that's like computerized, or something that we can like hand out to like donors or organizations that we're hoping to work with, so they understand where they fit in to the big picture.
Yep.
And things like that.
Well, I think this is something, that Chase and I sat down at the end of the year, and here in the room, we're looking at a PowerPoint presentation where we put together to try to look at 2019, what we got coming up for 2020. And, this organization is about a year and a half, since it was formed and got its 501c3. And, I think this is a good time, the start of the year, to go back and look at that. And so maybe, Chase, we can take this presentation, maybe put it up on the website to give everybody a view into what's been accomplished, and share it with the world, right, of who you're trying to reach here. But for me, the first of the year is the time to sit down and kind of reflect back on exactly what you're saying. What have we accomplished this last year? Is it aligned with the goals that the organization has? And set goals for this next year, and then look to see how the organization structure, the roles and responsibilities that we have as a board, is it aligned with those goals, where we want to take the organization long term. So first of the year is always the right time to do that. So yeah.
So yeah, like some of those like key things that were components that we saw as like necessary things to develop and build before we started even like talking about having these independent trips, is like one, like the local partnerships. So like with West End, with Church on the Slab, with Become Network, and like George and all of them, and a number of other organizations. I think that's something we can like continue to try to grow. I definitely want to leverage, like, because we kind of talked about it, I definitely want to leverage Become a little bit more, because like their heart is very much for creating disciples that do work here in the Metroplex. And so even if we create a partnership with them to where we're kind of like the international arm, and then when we come back, we just kind of hand them off to Become, since we know that they're trustworthy. Like I think that's potentially something that could be good. And then as well, like different resources and material for the like participants, and related to missions and things like that. Because we don't just want to like have them go on this trip without being prepared, and we don't want to have them go through this experience without like being supported.
Well, I think that's key for the organization, right? You're talking about a little bit doing, international mission trips and stuff, but for me, the way that you can pull people in is through your local events.
Right.
Right? There's a lot of people that want to help but don't necessarily know how or where,
Yeah.
right? There's resources out there to kind of help them with that, but this organization can be one of those resources, right? And so what you're doing with some of the, organizing some of the local events, Dallas, Fort Worth, we'll get into a little bit later, but the trip you guys did down in Houston, these are things that people can probably invest in sooner than talking about a week-long, trip out of their lives to go travel someplace in the world, right? So for me, the local events is going to be the key thing to really pull people in initially, introduce
That's
them to
kind
the
of what
organization.
pulled you in, wasn't it, Ren? A little
Yeah.
bit was
Yeah.
when he helped with the slab.
Initially, we did the Church on the Slab deal, Fort Worth,
Yeah.
and that event really opened up my eyes and my wife's eyes. We both joined in, and it was a joy. Really enjoyed doing that, and that's kind of why I'm here. Now had the pleasure of knowing Chase for several years now. He actually interned with us back in the day, a few years back, and
Yeah.
through that, we've gotten to become pretty close. And I just feel like it was the right place to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's so good. And so like continuing on like with that and continuing to like be involved locally, because like for us, like one of the things like we've talked about a little bit that kind of goes with other things that we've had going on, like the cultural dinners and things like that, is like we know that not everyone has the ability to travel internationally, and so to be able to reach as far of a market as we can, like we need to provide things like weekend trips or cultural dinners or things like that. And I think the Lord definitely wants us to do that, because we shouldn't be hypocrites and only travel to serve and not serve here.
Yeah, and I feel like even with the local trips, it allows for the people to get to know the organization a little bit better. Gives you more exposure and leaves you with the thought of, you know what, I actually like these people. I believe in what they're doing. And so it allows people to contribute even more, whether that's financially or just of their time and just in different manners. So having local trips and different things like that as a priority, I think, was a good step for us to continue to take.
Yeah. And then another of like the key things that I think we were able to do, and again, it's like maybe more of like a general theme than something that I think there's tangible parts to it, but yeah, I think it's maybe kind of like a general theme, is to create like a solid infrastructure and like foundation for the organization, so that as we're growing, like as the exposure continues to grow, as these other opportunities that have come our way, like we start to pursue those, like we need to have a solid foundation for us to stand on, so that we don't just get overwhelmed or crumble as it grows. And so even just simple things like the website or like a donation platform or social media, or other things like meetings, like things like that, like I think we were able to get some of those things down to be able to get us through last year. And so I think maybe even like continuing to try to shore up some of those different things, because I mean, like,
Well, let's talk about, I guess, the things that we do have in place, right? So, people listening to the podcast, right? I know you guys have links. We do have a website that's up and running, right? It's updated regularly, and we have links to your podcast, links to the Facebook page, and we're using Facebook as the main mechanism as like an event calendar, right, for your local events and stuff. So anybody that's interested in what we're doing as far as local events right now can follow the Facebook page. That's our event calendar, and then links from the webpage, right? You talked about the donation platform. You do have it set up on the website now for donations through that means, right? Is the main mechanism that you've got set up right now, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then one of the things which I think this was one of like the most probably like surprising things that happened last year, that like I was hoping for, but I didn't think was gonna be able to like happen as much as it actually did, was to like build these relationships with these different organizations and these potential like long-term partners and things like that. And because definitely going into last year is something where like I felt it was very important for us to build partnerships like locally. And so we were able to do that with like Weston down in Dallas, and Become and like Habitat up in Denton and different things like that. And especially with like some of the churches around here and things like that. But as far as like the international partners go and like those opportunities, like that was something that I was very shocked, like like almost how easy it came. Because like I mean it started off like in March and February with you and me, like us just happening to go to China at the same time, and now with you like pretty much owning that relationship with the China church over in Shanghai, but then as well the doors that opened down there in Malaysia and Australia and like those areas. And then we go to like Costa Rica in May, and like we've been going down there for 4 or 5 years. And then with that, being able to talk with like Pablo and them, which they just happened to randomly come up to Dallas a month before we went down there. And just through conversation over at the Taste Project, which is another partnership that we've developed over the course of last year, like he was able to kind of see the heart that we have. And then from there, while we were in Costa Rica, we stayed there for a couple extra days and went and met with them, talked about like some of the projects that they would love to do in their community, and that potentially like we could partner in with them and like help them in.
Well, I think maybe to talking about, you were surprised how easy it was. I put that in quotes, air quotes, right, of how easy it was. I think maybe the reason that you're viewing it as easy, these organizations have the same values, morals, and philosophies of what this organization is trying to put together, right? It's a group of people that's trying to help their local communities, local people that need the help, right? And so when you work with organizations, you work with people that all have the same vision that you do. It makes it easier to build those relationships, right? Because you're all pushing and going in the same direction. Yeah. So, and I think all the organizations are looking for help, in terms of hands, in terms of monetary, in terms of financial support, whatever it might be. These groups are all, we're all driving in the same direction, same vision. So that's probably why, when you reach out to an organization, they're like, heck yeah, come on in. We'll make this better, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the main ways, or like one of the things that like the Lord really showed me was like something that I was believing that like wasn't true, is that I felt like in order to make these connections at the start of the year that like I needed to do something that was above and beyond just simple obedience. And like I think that was the big thing, was like literally just being able to walk in obedience, like opened up China, opened up Costa Rica, opened up the Ivory Coast with Yvonne and all them, opened up Europe with the Alps trip and Jesus Revolution and Norway, everything over there. And even that opened up like the Middle East and like certain countries that we can't name, but some that we can, like Lebanon. And then like from there, and then being able to bring like Matthias over here, like from Norway, to continue to develop those relationships. Like it was just crazy because like, yeah, I felt like I needed to like go out of my way to do all of that. And like even with like the Atlanta and Nashville trip, like even with like Adventures in Mission or like some of the artists out there, like it was just crazy. And I think something that we can take as encouragement is just like, definitely if this is something that like the Lord intends to be a thing rather than just a product of our selfish ambition, like it's just going to happen through discipline and just like obedience rather than like overwhelming striving and things like that. And so like I think that's something I can like work into, like trust and things like that. But yeah, I think definitely like continuing like I think this will probably be a theme with the other two as well, but just continuing to like do that, continuing to build those relationships, which will be able to happen whenever we go up to Norway in February. But just continuing along with that, I think can be so good.
I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a segue, right? You're talking about relationships that's been built here in the last year, and I think what's going to be key for the organization kind of moving forward a little bit is you got your toe in a lot of places right now, right? With a lot of groups that you've tried to reach out to and to touch, and I think with the size of the organization being very small, right? This is something that you're still trying to get off of the grassroots, ground floor. Is that at some point we're going to have to start kind of prioritizing a little bit those relationships and. We're not going to be able to have eyes, in 50 different places, right? Not to say that you release those partnerships; those are opportunities, right? And we need to be cognizant of that. But at some point, you kind of have to start prioritizing of where am I going to focus my resources in the coming year, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year type of a plan. What can be tangible things to reach, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think part of that, like just to be real and like you can let me know if like I'm not right. Because I mean, with everything that's happened over the past couple weeks, like I think it's really kind of made me like think about it. I think, I'll lay it out and then we can see maybe if this is something that's correct or not. But like maybe something of like how far or how quickly the organization can grow in terms of like accepting the opportunities that comes our way is like one dependent on. Obviously like fundraising and like donor growth and things like that, which I think just goes towards like our personal relationships with people, because that's one of the main ways. I mean, we're going to talk about it, but I think that's one of the main ways that we've seen people get connected is just like through personal relationships and things like that. Because if you think about like your church or St. Jude's or something like that, like whenever people donate to nonprofits, because they have like a connection with them. It's because like they feel something about them. And so there's a million different missions organizations out there. And so it's just in a way like being able to show people that like, hey, we do care about them and establishing those personal relationships. And then from there, like if they want to give, cool. If they don't want to and just want to pray, cool. I think dependent on that, and then as well, I think dependent on like our individual capacities to be able to carry like different loads in the organization. Because I mean, if we all do stay, like for example for me, if this stays part-time throughout 2020 and I continue with like the full-time job, then yeah, like there's only so much that like we can do. But for example, like if I end up like leaving the full-time job and like handle this full-time, then potentially like there's more that we can do than what it would be full-time, or if I'm doing a full-time job. And so
I think you're kind of looking towards future, right? 2020, and I think that's something we have to look at again. Realistic goals, how quickly can it grow, and where does it lead?
Yeah.
So let's finish up. Maybe kind of wrap up the 2019 stuff. I know you guys just we just did a trip to Houston, right? I think one thing, and I'll make this as a suggestion maybe on a future podcast, is that you guys kind of, we'll sit down and kind of do a lessons learned a little bit on the Houston trip, things that went well, things that can be improved on. I know that's one of the things you're wanting to do with kind of bringing unity to the entire mission trip type experience, right? For me, you got to look at an event that was actually organized through the group and look and see how it went, right?
Yeah, and I think like just since you brought the Houston trip up, like we can definitely talk about, because I mean it goes along with like the next thing, because definitely like one of the themes and goals for like last year was like just simply like just go out there and do it, because like I know I definitely struggle with perfectionism and wanting to get things perfect before I set anything in place. Like for example, for the website, I feel like it's still not something that I've been able to finish what I want to do and work on that, because I want it to be like as full of a representation of the organization as possible, even though there's no way that like one piece of like one website or one piece of art or one book can fully represent like your idea about like something, because there's so many facets of it. But yeah, just being able to like trust the Lord that like with the state that we're in right now, like he can still do a good work through us, and that like whatever he started he can finish. in whatever way that we're in right now. And so whether that's with like the cultural dinners, like for the Congolese cultural dinner, like shout out DRC, and then things like over at the Taste Project, going like West End, and then like with the Houston trip, and like with that, I mean, I think it can be, yeah, I mean, it fits in with this. Like, I think we can talk about the Houston trip, like right here, like, because it was really cool, like how I think how it worked together, and I think it showed me something in terms of like, because one of the ideas I've kind of like flirted around with for a little bit is the potential idea of like bringing either non-believers or like people who are struggling in their faith on like service trips to then be able to allow the Lord to really work in their heart there, and like for them to abide in the presence of the Lord that's there on mission trips in confidence that like God can do something through that. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a balance because like one of the things I've thought of is like, obviously we want to have respect and love for like those partners that we're working with in those countries or like in those cities. And so we don't want to bring people who are selfish, arrogant, like things like that. And so there's this balance between like giving participants a chance to like really come to know Jesus, and caring for the people that like we made a commitment to. But I think that's one of the things that like God, and reflecting on it, is kind of showing me about like the Houston trip is potentially like, you know, maybe like go after that like in a way, because with like Alpha Elite down there who we partnered with, like not a lot of people within that company like are believers. And so with that, like being able to partner with them donating almost $100,000 worth of clothes for us to distribute down there, and being willing to partner with them to show them that the Lord can do work through the things that he's given them, mm-hmm. but then as well giving them the opportunity to partner with us to show them that like not all Christians are just like blocked off or judgmental or things like that, but actually like being an example and like walking out our faith and things like that. And so I think that was really cool and something that is like confidence building, because there's a lot of those relationships that like we have with, for example, like with Alpha Elite down there, or with like different like organizations like around here that like just want to help people out, but that aren't necessarily like Christian or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I think what you're mentioning right now is one of the true foundations of why the organization was built, right? The ability to serve others is a way that you can build and strengthen your relationship with God, right? I mean, you've talked a lot, and I'm sure you've shared it on the podcast in the past, Chase, about, you know, when you were on trips, you know, as a youngster back in the day, that was something that really built your spirit and your fire to have a relationship with God inside yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, this is one of the basic foundations of the organization, is giving people opportunity to serve those that may not have, you know, financial means to do an international trip, or don't really know how and where to reach out to have, you know, to help people here and even in their local communities. This organization's trying to provide that as a resource for them, right? So I think you're exactly right. I mean, that's directly aligned with one of the foundations.
Yeah, you're not doing it just to help Christians. You're doing it to help people in need.
But it's
If
giving
bringing them to
people
God
opportunity.
is a plus for their organization, I'm sure that's, you would love for them to, but you're helping people that are in need.
Yeah, I mean, just understanding that,
And
like,
hope that God comes through.
yeah, just hope that they come back to right relationship with the Father, and like that being like the underlying motivation, but pursuing that through different methods.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because like I think like, because one of the things that like I think I'm trying to figure out is, I mean, as far as like ecumenism goes, like, and unity amongst like believers, because definitely with us being believers, like there's different roles that non-believers should carry in our life relative to like believers, and like the word specifically backs that up. And so from there, like being able, because like there's definitely like a that's a good way to put it, like a discernment that we need to have whenever approaching like these different situations, whether it's like organizations to partner with that have the label of Christian or that don't, is being able to discern like the fruit of their work. And then from there, like for example, like it probably wouldn't be beneficial for us to only partner with like non-Christian organizations. And it probably wouldn't be good for us to partner with, for example, like hyper charismatic organizations or super, super traditional organizations. Like it's not good to stay in those little lanes. And so, but being able to have discernment about like, hey, like, are these people bearing good fruit and are they good people to be associated with? Because I think there's definitely like a balance between like being willing to give people a chance and like partnering in them and partnering with them. Because like one of my favorite quotes by like Lecrae is like Jesus was willing to be associated with like what people perceived as darkness to bring the light. And so like that's something that I think is so cool. But at the same time, us not throwing pearls at swine. And so being able to like balance those things. But that's only something that I think the Lord could really lead us in, just through his spirit and discernment. As far as the Houston trip goes, as far as like lessons learned, definitely one of the things was the trip went a little bit different than how I thought it was going to in terms of like the actual serving. And so definitely grateful to like the Father in that he showed us grace in different areas and we were able to get like one good run through of this before like potential partnerships and relationships like were at stake and things like that. So definitely just trusting in him at the end of the day, I think, is a key thing. And then definitely that like it can't just be me. Like for these events to be everything that the Lord wants them to be, like we figured it, like, no, what's the word? Abstractly, like we all need to be like a part of it, meaning like not all of us need to be at all the events, but just meaning like of that group who's at that event, like we all need to be like have different responsibilities and things like that. Because one of the big things that happened was like Roland and Grayson like really stepped up at that event. Like Grayson with the photography, social media, like he did all of that and killed it. And then Roland with a lot of like the actual like practical like ordering of things, like, hey, here's where we're going to put the clothes, things like that, because he had been there before. And so then from there, I was able to like not just help out with the event, but like the director of the center whose facilities that we were using like wanted to have like 20-minute conversation in the middle of everything, and like I was able to go do that because other people stepped up. And from that, we were able to talk about even more things that they're wanting to do and like continue to develop that relationship and grow. And so like I think that was definitely one of the good things from the trip. And then definitely like giving more flexibility time in terms of like time cushions, because that was something like I gave what I thought was sufficient time cushions but really weren't. And so
I think you're taking that from your own personal schedules and stuff of how you build stuff, right? That you try to plan something into every minute of every day, right? And when you're working with a group, you can't plan like that, right?
Yeah.
But I guess kind of a question that I would have, I didn't attend the Houston trip, but for those that did, about, the infrastructure as far as the trip, as far as transportation down there, as far as where people were staying, what was organized in terms of group events. Because, I know one of the things that I take from mission trips is the time when the group's together, right? And there's the time that you're serving together. But for me, just as important is the time when you're, because you're away from home, you're living somewhere, right? And for me, one of the most important things for a mission team is to build that team separately from what they're actually doing the day of the serving, but also having meals together, having devotionals together, and having some infrastructure around that.
Yeah.
So I know this was the first trip, and it was kind of a planned weekend, so it was only a couple of days. So a lot of what I'm sharing is more for a longer term trip. But what was your feeling about how it was planned in terms of transportation, where people were staying, and having that dedicated team time away from the actual serving event itself?
Yeah, I think looking back on it, one of the things that I wish we would have carried through with was like getting that Airbnb that we were talking about.
Where everybody could have stayed together. So, for those that don't know, there was people kind of staying in some different houses and staying with some friends.
Host homes and friends and things like that.
Yeah.
And so whenever we got down there Friday night, like there were a couple people who we were supposed to meet at Roland's house, but there were a couple people who were getting down there late because of different things that just went like to their friend's place. And so like that Saturday morning, like I wanted to allow the people to sleep in as much as possible because I know that with the drive, like I wanted to give them that. But because of that, there was like at the start of it, there was like some like kind of craziness of like, oh, like this person's like a few minutes, like 10 minutes late. Oh, this person doesn't have a shirt yet. Oh, this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think definitely looking back on it, like, I think that's something that we can do for like, because I mean, I know part of it for like this time around was because of the cost of it. But I think going forward, like that's something that we should be able to budget in. And kind of like say like, hey, we're going to commit to this and do that. And then I think something that was good was like there's just the balance of like serving and like having fun and things like that. Because we served like Saturday like 8 a.m. until like 3 or 4 p.m. Then after that we gave people like 3 hours to just kind of relax, things like that. Then we had a dinner at 7:30, and then we went and had a game night over at Roland's house from like 10 until like 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And with that like that was a ton of fun because we were able to just like chill.
That's kind of my
Things
point,
like
right?
that.
Is it's
So
to
he did
build
do
those
it.
relationships
He did
and build those teams, right? As you want to organize events separately from that.
Yeah,
So,
I would like to do it before serving as well.
Yeah.
Because I think that's needed. And I think we demonstrated that we want to do that with like what we did at the Taste Project with the Alps team. But I think definitely having that balance is something that us as young adults definitely want because we know the value of having fun.
Yeah.
Obediently, but having fun. So I guess kind of going into 2020, or I guess just real quick, like the one last thing that we were able to do, I think in 2019, was create like what we call like avenues of exposure. And so one of the big ones is a podcast. Because I mean, as Joshua said, like there's been people who've come up to him, been like, "Hey, I listen to the podcast."
Really? Yeah.
You're not that funny. Just kidding. And then from there, like that gives Joshua an opportunity to like share about the organization and things like that. And then like with our partnerships with like, I know like Jesus Revolution, for example, like there's a number of people like over in Norway and Europe now that know about us that like wouldn't happen without like Jesus Revolution, like reposting like what we posted on social media or just like conversations, things like that. And then one of the things that like I was definitely trying to be patient about, because one of the things you definitely don't want people to perceive is that like you're just using them for their platform or things like that. And with that not being our heart, like with that really being like us wanting to help people, and then like, hey, you have resources, like if you want to partner along with us, that'd be cool. If not, whatever. And so with that, like with Alpha Elite and Gateway, with like those being like 2 partners that we're gonna have long-term relationships with, like we needed to be patient about like things like asking them, hey, can you post on social media saying that we partnered or something like that, or can you repost this, like, and so being willing to like be patient about it, so that trust can develop, so they can see our heart, and then from there like think that, hey, like if like for example with Alpha Elite, with like the platform that they have, like I know they've expressed they want to do this like quarterly. And so from there, this is eventually something that they're going to want to put out from like a PR standpoint and things like that, because it's a good thing that they're doing. And so why not show like the good things that are going on?
So what do you have for 2020?
So yeah, kind of like going forward, into 2020. I think one of the things, I think we can kind of get into this now because it was something that, I mentioned, I think was like a need before the podcast. And so I think maybe this will be like more of an area for discussion rather than having to hear my lame voice, is like grow and improve like the board structure. And I think there's a few different components to that. I think one is just simply growing the board, like beyond like us, including Grayson, like us six. And because from there, like one of the main purposes of board that I would say, at least from my experience at my full-time job, is the two main purposes of board members is to, one, provide accountability to the leadership of the organization, but then two, go out there and basically like advertise for the organization and be able, because it's the only reason that you should want to be on a board is if you feel connected with like the purpose of the organization. So at that point, you spending the time serving those hours and investing in the organization doesn't feel like an obligation. It's like something that you want to do. And so from there, with it being something that you want to be involved with, like you should want to spread like the mission of it. And if you hear opportunities that come up, being able to like share about the organization. And so like for one example, like we've talked about wanting to do like a similar to what we did down in Houston, do one down to Austin. Because with Grayson being down there, we want to give him a leg to stand on whenever he's fundraising, trying to meet with all these different organizations to build relationships, partner, and things like that. And so I think that's something that would be good to try to do in February. But with that, what he was doing was, obviously he has like his dad down at like the Texas Children's Home. And so he's starting to build like a relationship with that. But then he was at church at Grace Covenant, either this weekend or the weekend before. But there was a lady there that basically he overheard in conversation talking about like, oh, like I had talked to like this other church about partnering with us and like this homeless food program downtown that we want to do, but like they don't have the capacity to do it right now. And then Grayson was just like, hey, what's up? Have you heard of Perspectives? And so basically from there was able to like share like our heart and then get her contact information to possibly partner. And so like I think as far as like kind of like what y'all would potentially be like interested in getting involved in is obviously like we each have like different platforms in life and different skills and things like that. And so like for y'all, what I think this would be a good way to put it. What do you think is a need that we have that you would like be able to fill or want to fill or things like that?
I think this is where we should have like a piece of paper and just write it down and give it to you on what we think we can bring to the organization.
Well, just like what
kind of gifts we have?
What comes off the top of your head?
I mean, for me, it's what I shared earlier. So, by my profession, I'm a project manager, program manager, right? And so, putting a little bit more structure around, how some of these things are planned. We're talking about, some of the local events and stuff, and trying to do those on a more regular basis, right? Helping with some of the planning, execution of that. I don't necessarily have to attend the trip. I didn't attend the trip to Houston, but Susan and I spent many nights, helping to organize and get things
The
together
bags
for
filled
for
and
that
stuff
trip,
like
right?
that.
Yeah.
And so, we can help with some of that aspect of it, and I think what would be key for me is that you get stuff on a calendar and you start to put structure around it, right? I think we're going to have a hard time getting participation if things are kind of ad hoc. I'm not really sure when this is happening. I don't know if that's going to be next month or 3 months from now, right? So I think first off, for the organization and for everybody, for me, it would help that we start getting things more on calendars, and things that people can actually plan.
You want to
their
plan,
life
I would
around,
say,
right?
like
So,
he said,
yeah.
plan out months ahead. And you can be flexible too, and if something comes up a week down the road, do it.
Well, so with that, because typically how things have kind of gone up to this point is the confirmation. I'll put it this way: the confirmation of the event happens about a month to 2 months before it
And that's fine.
happens.
Yeah,
and so
that's-
from there, like, because especially with us wanting to, again, that goes towards the mission statement, continue to grow these relationships. Again, we need to find the balance of caring for the relationships that we have and growing. And so I think that's a separate conversation. But for this, like with us wanting to grow all these different relationships, there's going to be things that are going to come up that we'll want to pursue that are not going to be in the moment regular things. Such as the Houston event. Like this first time around is not a regular thing. We're wanting to turn it into a regular thing, but it wasn't at that time. And so from there, I think definitely with like the way that we want to do things and the striving towards that long-term goal of like more and more relationships, like there's going to be, I think there's a need for creating monthly events like or quarterly events, which we talked about, to manage those. And maybe this is a way that we can find a way to find the balance, but like be able to have like the monthly or quarterly events to like keep our relationships that we have right now, but then as well being able to like throw these random events on there, but maybe have the deadline of us needing a month in advance and
Well,
telling
like
those new
Rand would
relationships
bring
with that.
West Texas, that you have no
Exactly.
connections to West Texas, where he could throw that.
Well, I
in
think
there.
two things that I can do just thinking is increase donorship just because of my connections and kind of what I've done in my career in the past, and then create exposure on the social media side of it.
Yep.
I think that could help with that too. Cool. It's kind of what I vision.
Cool. Yeah, and that's what I was kind of
We're definitely
like
weak in that spot.
thinking as well, because definitely, but and I, like that was something that like we've been kind of realizing is like, especially for me, I've been focusing so much on like the like B2B relationships, to where like any sort of like donor to business relationships like hasn't necessarily been able to be formed. I think there's a couple parts to that. Like one, just like not having the time to do it, unfortunately, even though it's something we needed to be doing. But I think another thing as well is like, I was definitely aware of wanting to develop everything with the organization before we started approaching donors and things like that. Because the last thing that you would have wanted to do is like have some kid come up to you and be just like, hey, give me money for this nonprofit. What's your plan? Oh, I don't know. I just want to help the world somehow. And so being intentional about like creating a plan, but now I think it's the proper time to be able to like start to pursue like those donor relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
Now that I think we have like kind of a plan, like hopefully a good plan, or hopefully an obedient plan.
We have
I
like
should
a
say.
foundation in place to
Right.
send people to, right?
Yeah.
So like, I know people, you know people, but you've got to have somewhere to send them, right?
Yeah.
I might not know the ins and outs as well as you do about everything with perspectives, but if I believe in it and want to see it grow, then I can send them your way, and everybody has a role. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good. Like Mom, for you, for instance, like I think one of the things that you could do is that could be really good is like bookkeeping and things like that. Because that's something that I maybe spend like maybe like 2-3 hours on a month. But like that just adds up with like everything else that's going on. And then like I know like you and I have talked about it, but I definitely want us to sit down over the next couple weeks and like kind of show you like how to edit it, especially with like knowing that like you have a laptop now to be able to do it on, because I didn't know like what that situation was like. And so for me, I was like kind of thinking about being able to like get you a laptop and things like that. And so because I think like we've talked about it, like I want this to be like your baby that you run with, like you're the personality, like you're the one that is created for it. And so I think that could be really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, just being able to, finding different ways of getting more people involved. Because I feel like one thing that I've kind of learned in my own weird leadership kind of things, the more good people that I had around me doing different things, the easier whatever I was doing was. And so I feel like with the potential to continue to increase as an organization, we'll be able to draw more people in, and through that, having different people take different tasks. I feel like, in a sense, in a biblical perspective, the body kind of, different members doing different things. I think that's going to really help out a ton to really strengthen everything and really allow us to grow even further. To where responsibility doesn't just fall on a few people, but it's stretched out, let's say, to where instead of 5 people picking up something that weighs 1,000 pounds, there's like 100 of us, that makes it a lot easier to be able to carry. So
yeah. And I think definitely just going towards like all of this, like this is just something that I think I'm gonna have to step into more. Because like we all know, like I have like struggles with trusting people and things like that. And it's funny because at church today, like one of the things that Pastor Shea talked about over at Northway was like, pulled it up, 2 Timothy 2, 1-2. You then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Jesus Christ, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also.
yeah,
And it's just like it's a key within like regular discipleship from our faith standpoint, but I think as well anything that like the Father's called us to as well.
Yeah.
Is being able to like take what the Lord's shown us and like spread that vision and give it to others and things like that. Because I think even being able to look at like Pastor Robert with Gateway, the fact that the church is only 19 or 20 years old, and the trust that he's been able to place in so many different people, like the growth that the Lord's been able to put on that place wouldn't have been possible if he wouldn't have trusted people. And so trying to be able to do that. But yeah, and then I think another one that kind of goes towards like continuing to like delegate and growth and things like that is like developing like this like regional affiliates program that we've thought of, that like for like Roland is like our only like regional affiliate right now, and we saw like the fruit of that because there was him and his involvement saved me from having to go down to Houston like 3 more times. And so like that was a lot of days and like money, things like that. He was able to save us. And so I think being able to develop ones, I should say Grayson being able to like help us develop ones in Austin. But then as well being able to like even develop ones around here. Because one of like the purposes of it is to continue to like hear about organizations that like want to partner or need help or things like that. And so then from there, like they can come to us and be like, hey, there's this organization, like, is it like possible we could do anything with them? Because like within like our own like areas that we're going to physically be in and like our networks and things like that won't be able to reach everyone that we could. And so being able to grow the amount of people that could come into contact with like more potential partner organizations, like could be good. And then from there, even if we do like an Austin trip or another Houston trip, we have people who can like help get the ground settled and ready down there for us to go over there.
Well, I mean, since we're talking about 2020, why don't we go into a discussion on, tangible goals? So you did the Houston trip, right? Partnering with Athlete and the group down there. Is that something we want to do again this next year?
Yeah.
Once, twice?
I think it depends on if they're willing to have us use some of their resources in Austin. And
I
so,
was going to bring that up as a second option, as a second question. If you're wanting to organize something towards Austin, is that a trip that you would want to plan this year as well?
yes, yeah, like
You're
Austin,
looking at it as a partnership, Athlete plus Grayson's local contacts there.
yeah, because I mean, we need resources. Like we need people to donate resources, like rather than just asking people to donate money for us to buy resources. Like we'll get more resources if people just donate resources rather than money.
Mm-hmm.
And so there we're able to serve people more effectively if people donate resources. And so an Athlete has a lot and they're generous. And so from there, one of the things like we want to understand, like, because I think they could potentially be even interested in doing something up here, because other athletic apparel companies and like entrepreneurs that they're connected with are like, there's a couple of them up here. There's not really any in Austin, but there's some up here that they could potentially be interested in. As far as Austin goes, like that would just be something that we would talk with them about. Hey, like because basically they said like reach out to them like whenever we want to do something. And so with that, talking about this Austin trip, being like, hey, is that potentially something that y'all would be interested in like donating towards, or do y'all mainly just want to do work in like the Houston area or Dallas area, things like that? And so if they want to donate towards that Austin trip, then, because I don't really know all the resources that we can bring down there, like if it'd be beneficial to do clothes or just food or hygiene, whatever. But basically, I would say we can count on Athlete for like 3 or 4 donations or like enough resources to host a trip. And so like if one of those is Austin, then we could go down to Houston like 2 or 3 more times. But yeah, I mean, I think just in general, being able to keep up with that relationship is a key thing. I don't know the frequency of how much we'd want to like talk with them and things like that, because I know like they'll reach out to us if there's anything that they need to get rid of. But
And I know, kind of speaking to not so much Houston and Austin, but locally, there's always a lot of events that come up. Earlier, we were discussing, once a month or how that might look like. But, since we're all kind of here and there's so many churches within just our reach,
Yep.
there's so many different opportunities for us to be able to partner. And we just got to figure out which ones we want to attend, right? Because I know a lot of times we've done stuff with Gateway Young Adults where it was on Halloween or just different things we've been able to serve and help out, or even
Thanksgiving.
with Thanksgiving,
With Mission Arlington.
I was going to say, Mission of Arlington, we have a great connection with Dr. Guine
Yeah.
for like toothbrushes and stuff like that. That we need to keep that. So like when you need stuff, we need people like that to be able to reach out to,
right?
because they get it for nothing with the people that they normally order from,
And that's why
for
I'm saying,
misprints and stuff like that.
that's why I'm saying like we need to keep these relationships for people to donate resources rather than just money. And but some of those things can be flexible depending on like how their business is doing. And
Well, I know
if
I
they
have a pretty
extra
good
inventory.
connection in San Antonio with a minister, and one in Lubbock with a minister.
Yeah.
So if
I
you
think-
ever wanted to reach out in those areas, those are family
Yeah,
members.
like I think definitely potentially like Lubbock is like something that we can talk about, and like because with Ren and like
Well, my
Carl-
cousin's
like
a
Carl and
minister
all
down
them.
there in
Yeah.
Lubbock.
Yeah, I'm just saying like we would have people who'd be interested in like helping out down there or up
Yeah,
there
with
and
tech.
stuff like that.
Yeah, being right there.
But yeah, and so, but yeah, I think as far as like for next year goes, like that those could be possibilities for like the Austin or Houston trips or things like that. But yeah, and I mean, I think like speaking to it in terms of like tangible things, like I think something that it would be good to like spend time to think about is like creating like continuous programs and like reoccurring events rather than like one-offs, because then for that, like for us from like the donor end, we can articulate to them like, hey, if you donate this amount, like this will cover like this monthly event or this or this or this, and or even for that, if they wanted to start monthly giving, then it's just like, hey, like you could donate towards like this program that we have or this program that we have, rather than just like these one-offs where people like may not be ready to donate or may not have enough time to like be able to put that on the schedule and stuff like that. And so like I don't really know what we want those to particularly look like. Maybe
You may want to have a donor for like a weather tragedy or something, where you can partner with like people that are going to help, like the tornadoes that hit in Dallas or something like that. That can be something. It's something you can't plan because you don't know when something like that would happen, but it is something that you can maybe think about
yeah.
as a group to get together and go down and help, or could be local as far as that goes.
Because I know Gateway Dallas sent a lot of people there in Dallas, so that's just something where we could have joined in with them
And it helped
yeah.
get your name out there too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can see like what we want that to kind of be like. And then we've kind of talked about like the other, I would say like kind of 4 main things for 2020 is to like continue to develop like these local and international partners, like what we talked about, both like the depth of those relationships, but then the amount of them as well. And then basically increasing like the donor base, because yeah, I mean, as far as from the IRS standpoint, we need to hit that public support status by 2023, which I won't get into like the math and the statistics and all that, but like that's just something that we got to get down. And like potentially like that's something where maybe we could talk about hosting something similar to like a gala that like Latin Equipped did, or other kind of things. I think that could be maybe more of like a 2021 thing rather than a 2020 thing. But that's something we could potentially talk about. And then basically finish building out, like actually building these parts of the trip model, because like we have it down and we have it articulated, but just like physically building it out. And so being able to develop, like, for example, like the resource that we're working on with like Reach Records and some of the other like music labels and some of the other partners, because like that's something that like kind of goes like hand in hand with the next one of like continuing, like actually growing the exposure and taking advantage of the avenues of exposure we've created, is like with that project, like with the potential platform that like those people who will be like endorsing it and promoting it and like co-signing it and things like that, like that's going to be, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like potential funds to bring into like the organization, I mean, I think it's honestly like somewhere in like the hundreds of thousands. Like I really do. With all these, because as well, like even yesterday, like it's totally just like potential right now, but I was at a game night up at Jaren's, and like one of their friends worked at Kanakuk for a while, and she's really close with like one of the directors up there, and so she thought of the idea of like, hey, like maybe this could be like a resource related to like church camps as well. And I was like, didn't even think about that before. Like, that's good. And she reached out to one of the directors over there, and they're like, yeah, like this would be like a great idea. And so like I'm gonna be having a call with them like sometime over the next couple weeks to like see if it's something that they even like, see if it's something that they're interested in. And so like there's a lot more applications for like this project than like what I originally thought. And with the exposure that's gonna be there, and with like I think that could be big and provide a lot of funds for the organization for us to do like what we want to do. But then just be able, like with the heart of that project, just to be able to help like those people that's intended for as well. And so, yeah. And so I think kind of going to like the practical like schedule as far as like 2020 goes. I mean, I know like a big focus for me is obviously going to be like getting that resource finished before like middle of May, whenever we want to release it. Now practically that looks like, well, no, I won't talk about those elements, but basically getting that done before May.
Are you gonna connect Costa Rica at all to your,
What do you mean?
like, get your name out there for the Costa Rica trip in May?
Like just going on it, or yeah, I'm gonna be going on it, but I mean, as far as the project goes, like we'll see. I don't know.
I mean, what I'm saying is like, is your company connected to the Costa Rica trip at all? Your organization?
I don't know. Like they haven't.
They've got some new people.
Yeah, I mean the people who were in oversight of the previous trip are still there, and like they haven't articulated like a desire to do that or anything. And with us working on like a different project down there, like that's something that like I don't think it's necessarily a need for us to partner in that.
Okay.
Yeah, since we're gonna be going down there to meet with Pablo and things like that anyways, talk about other things.
Just curious.
Yeah. But then definitely something like over these next few months is like recording like these podcasts with like some of the people around here that like with Chi-Chi or with Reward and things like that.
Yeah, I think with that, there's, since we've started and been consistent with it, I think the people have, really noticed, oh wow, it's not just something that we did once.
Yeah.
Wait, what happened?
No, honestly, it's just funny because related to that, like one of my friends on New Year's Eve told me like, hey man, like I've been listening to the podcast, and like I'm just like, it just hit me. I was like,
yeah.
Wait, like people listen to this?
Yeah, people would tell me all the time. I'm like, oh really?
Like, and I'm just like just grateful because it's just like, because I think one of the things like the Father has shown me through that is like, whenever friends see consistency is when they'll support you. Because they aren't for like flakes or one-offs or things like that. But if it's like consistent, then like they're gonna be there to back you. And I was just like, dang.
Yeah.
Because I bet you, like honestly, dude, like Joe Rogan, I bet you whenever like he started his up, like he even had a platform at that point because he was a fighter and whatnot, and a comedian. But I'm sure all those people were just like what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I'm sure by episode like 100, honestly, like I didn't even come to really know of it until like episode like 700, like 600, 700. And that's just like, that's like, because I mean, he records 5 a week. I mean, that's basically 3 years of work right there until like it became like as popular as it is. But I mean, that's the Pareto distribution in effect, and I won't go into that. But yeah, dude.
Yeah, just really being, being consistent and bringing different people that do different things or into different things, and I feel like that's really been a great help for a lot of people, and just hearing a lot of different feedbacks. And I always ask people like, "What do you think about it?"
Yeah.
So I've been getting a lot of great feedback from a lot of different people, which has been awesome to hear. Kind of like you said. Because I know once, because I was doing my YouTube videos, I'll make it very short. And I remember one time I posted it, and I didn't get the response that I thought right away. And I remember sitting on my bed and I was just kind of like, man, why did I even post it? Just all these different things were coming to my mind. And the Lord reminded me of that verse that talks about not despising the days of small beginnings.
Yeah.
And so I received comfort in that. But, with God, he always goes a step above. And two of my friends from on Instagram the last people that I expected to even respond, one of them was like, man, I really just love seeing what you're doing. And I just want to let you know to keep going. And I was like, what? And right after that, another person messaged me the same thing. And I was just like, wow. So kind of just even thinking about this, really seeing what consistency is able to do and how people hear, even though they might not say anything, right? But they still see and they're listening and stuff like that. So let that be an encouragement for us to continue to go even further.
Yeah. And I think, like being able to start to like travel for that, like being able to, because we've talked about like going out to Atlanta and Nashville because that's what we would need to do to record with those people. But yeah, potentially like investing in it to be willing to be able to do that, it could be good.
Yeah.
Because if we invested enough to buy these mics, like a plane ticket ain't too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think like with Grayson as well, like being able to do like some of the social media and things like that, I think it'll be good. But yeah, and then we have like the Norway trip in March to go up there, or February, March, to go meet with like Jesus Revolution to talk with them about like seeing if they want to do certain things that could then open up where basically we partner with like basically what one of the things we'd be doing, because we would be like partnering with them on that, like on the project, but as well we would try to connect them with like a couple of ministries over here to be able to bring like leaders from those ministries over to work with JR for a little bit, because there would be a benefit to like both organizations for doing that.
And speaking to some of the cultural dinners, one of the things we want to continue to focus on, I think I've just found a lot of different people, a lot of friends that I come in contact with, and just knowing where they're from and just seeing the opportunities there. Like I mentioned, one of my friends from Brazil, continuing to talk with him and his family about that being a potential of one of the cultural dinners we're able to host this year, and just having different people from all over the place. I think will be really good, because I had a lot of people give me a lot of feedbacks from whenever we did ours.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were like, oh, I didn't know that about you. And I was like, yeah, I never talked about that. So them really just diving into the culture through food and conversation, I think that's a good avenue for us to continue to focus on.
Yeah, and thinking about it, I just added to the podcast Google Doc a bottom part about cultural dinner possibilities. So if you want to add all your people on there,
Yeah.
I think that could be good, because yeah, we've talked about it a little bit, and we haven't had one since yours.
No, we had
Mattia.
Oh yeah, Norwegian one. Forgot about that. But yeah, so I think that's potentially something we can like pick back up like every couple months or something like that, depending on how the funds go. But yeah, and then we have probably in April the scouting trip out to the Ivory Coast, and everything that could possibly come with that trip, because that could be a big one as well, with the potential like people who we're going to bring on the trip. Then obviously like whenever you get Yvonne and Shelby involved, like that's a big thing anyways. And then Costa Rica in May, and then in June we have the Mexico trip with Gateway that we're going to be partnering in, and then the Guatemala trip.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So one of the things we're talking about with the organization, right, and that you've asked for help as far as delegating and stuff. So the trip that's being organized to Mexico, is it an official partnership trip with Perspectives?
Yeah.
So is that an event that I know that you've volunteered with Gateway to help plan, right? Are you expecting any participation from the board to help plan that trip, or is anybody else going on the trip? Or is
No,
it just
I
you?
mean, if potentially I could see if Ren wants to go.
It's not just about going though; it's also about the planning aspects of it,
The
right? So
the planning's already like that's just me and my Gateway co-lead Paul. Like that's just us, and like then that's all that Gateway wants involved. And so with that, because like the Alps trip, we were partnering in them, but I wasn't in actual leadership on the trip, to whereas this one I am.
right.
And so there's still it's gonna be different. than how
But I
the Alps
guess
trip-
here's the root of my question. So just like the Houston trip, you had two people that were supporting you behind the scenes that did a lot of the footwork to put all that together. Wasn't known by anybody on the trip probably who got all that stuff together. So my point is that I'm making with you, you can be the front man towards Gateway. I don't know what of that trip you have to actually be involved in planning. Is it transportation? Is it devotionals? Is it living? You know, I guess my point is, don't think you got to all do it by yourself. You can have part of the support staff here. Even if we're not going on the trip, we'd love to try to help in some way
Yeah.
to take load off, right?
Yeah,
So
they do all that. Basically, what we're in charge of is recruitment and then getting like pre-trip meetings planned. But then from the perspectives end, what we're going to be adding to it is the project, but then as well organizing a couple pre-trip and post-trip like service events with the network that we have.
yeah,
Because that's something that Gateway lacks right now is their in-trip experience is great. Just coming back, like it's something that they've said like
building the team before and after to have
Yeah.
them ready to participate in the fullest extent possible. Yeah.
yeah. And so like that's gonna be like where we're helping out with it and things like that. But then as well in July we have like, and we can talk with, because is it Pastor Josh who's mainly doing that with y'all?
So with July, what is her name? So one of the co-leaders is Courtney,
Okay.
and the other I haven't met her yet. I think her name is Ashley. I want to say.
Oh, Ashley Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about this.
With
Yeah.
Ashley.
Cool. Dude, y'all are gonna love Ashley.
Yeah.
She's awesome. And so with that, because basically Joshua's small group, they're going on a trip down to Guatemala, and we're gonna talk with Gateway about potentially partnering in that one as well, since Joshua is going on that. And so helping them with that experience and everything. And then I'm trying to figure out, because a couple of the things that we ended up, as of right now, not being able to do for next year is going out to Shanghai to further that relationship with the church out there and have meetings and see things that we could potentially do in the future. They invited us to partner with them on a mission trip to Thailand. Not a suburb of Shanghai, but to Chiang Mai. And that's something that, at least as of right now, hasn't ended up working out, which sucks because, as well, the Grapevine Church got me connected with Paul and Michelle Reitz, who Michelle did some work in
Is that the one we
Thailand.
met?
Huh?
Was that the girl we met? At Grapevine?
Yes. Yeah.
Her dad plays the guitar.
Yeah. And so, because she went on a few trips and has served at a school out in Chiang Mai as well. And so that would have been really cool because, like, that relationship we built with, like, that Thai partner and the relationship with the Shanghai church, like, would have all came together, like, on one trip. And, like, the school and, like, the church don't really even know each other. Like, and we just happen to know, like, meet both of them. And so, like, those are two things, like, those are a couple things that, like, didn't end up working out for next year. It would definitely be beneficial to go back to Germany to meet with, like, the JR base leaders down there, Paul and Sarah, or Philip and Sarah, to talk with them about doing different things throughout that area and if there's any need that they have for partnership. because I don't think I'll be able to go to Germany in July, but we can see. And then one of the other things that we're still trying to figure out, if JR wants to do the project and wants that to be a part of some of their mission trips, then at the end of July, they might want me to go over for a few days at the end of summer team, like their big 2-week mission trip, to like help with that project. And so just going over there for literally like 3 days. And then from there, like, I wanted to do some work with Latin Equip in Peru, but that might not be something that we're able to do this year, in terms of like actual mission work and things like that. But yeah, and so that's kind of like timeline and practicals and things like that. So, but cool. Yeah, I think, was there anything else that we wanted to? Cool. Well, Joshua, you have anything else?
No, looking forward to 2020, just different things we'll be able to participate in and be a part of, and different people that we'll be able to bring on, whether it's local trips, just different things that we want to do.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it and glad we're able to kind of sit down, like you mentioned earlier, being able to have everybody here at the same time, so we're kind of able to put faces to the names and all that good stuff. So
yeah, that's good, man. So yeah, guys, so that'll be it for today. We'll go ahead. There's a couple other things we got to wrap up, but I think that'll give you all some good insight into like what we're thinking about for next year and everything we were able to do last year. If y'all have any questions or want to get involved, definitely feel free to reach out to us. Like, all of our information is going to be in the description below. Feel free to subscribe, give us a rating, whatever you want to do. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. Definitely appreciate the time, and much love.